Alright, let's learn about gradients in Affinity Designer 2.5. I have my object here, a boring gray circle, and now I select it. So I choose the move tool, I click on it, and then I can click on the gradient tool, or I just hit G on my keyboard, and I click here at one corner of my object, and I drag it to wherever I want the gradient to go. I release it, and I got my first gradient. Now let's say this gradient is a little bit boring. Let's say I want like a bright blue here, and I click on this, and I want a kind of even brighter blue here. So now I have my gradient like this, and I can still completely move the endpoints of my gradient. So I can move it even above and beyond the object that I'm applying the gradient to. I can move it closer to it, right? But let's say I want it to be kind of at the corner of this, and I want it to be like this, right? And I can still change the color. So if I say, you know what, I would like this to be a little bit more like this, totally possible. Another cool thing I can do, you see this little line here, in the middle between these 2 points. I can click this and drag it around this way or that way, and you see what happens, right? Another cool thing I can do is I can just click on the line here, and it will create another point, and by default it will be the exact color that is already here, but I can change that. So I could say, you know what, I want to have some, give me some pink here, and it'll apply a pink gradient, and I can say, you know what, I want it to be more, now it's eating away too much of the blue here, so I want it to be kind of, one wants to here, one wants to here, and I can make it sharper, right? So it's more like a line. And then I can do this as many times as I want. So I could say, you know what, give me something yellow here, and it starts to look quite intense, right? And I can again adjust the middle point between these two, right? Well, let's say I'm fine with this. I can adjust the middle point between these two, and I can still drag all this around, and it will automatically, apply accordingly. You can also just make this completely vertical. Another thing I can do easily is I can change this to radial, right? And then you see what happens. Creates this little thingy here, and we can also change the size of the overall thing, drag it around, and then we have this, right? We can also change it to conical, and then we end up with this, right, like a cone. You can also, I'm not going to go with bitmap, that's another wild thing. We can also just go here solid, and then will be just one color and the gradient is removed. We can go back to linear. But if we go on solid, you will see that all the different layers we had applied, it's all lost, right? So let's just, for the sake of it, add some more points here. Let's go with this, and here let's go with that. Maybe something like this, just to make it more visible, and this. And now another thing we can do is we can rotate it. All right, maybe that's not the best way to show. Okay, so we can rotate it. Dup, dup, always rotates it 90 degrees, right? And we can flip it or reverse it. So it just changes the sides. Again, let's do this and this. Yeah, and that's pretty much the thing. And then you can, if you want, again, you can just, if you don't want any gradient at all, or let's say, you do something else, create other objects, and by default, it's still kind of the default fill, right? And you can do this with any kind of object that you create. Now let's say you want to remove the gradient from this one. Again, you just choose the gradient tool, and you go solid, right? And the gradient is removed. Another thing, you can also just change the gradient in any of these individual objects. So you could say, you know what, this one, I don't want that to be a yellow one, so you select it and then you hit delete. The yellow one is gone, right? And you can see there's a lot you can do with these things, right? So it's fun to play around with this, and it's a very powerful gradient tool.